Loving greetings, Jai Guru. It is my great pleasure and privilege to welcome our revered President and spiritual head, Brother Chidananda. Please rise.
Please sit down. Well, let me take a look at you after this wonderful week. I don't really need to look because I can feel. Good work, devotees. Master is proud of you. Well, loving greetings, my dear divine friends, divine souls, beloved members of our Master Paramahansa Yogananda's Self-Realization Fellowship and Yogoda Satsanga Society family. Well, welcome to you all. That's the formal greeting, but shall I tell you how I really want to greet you? Yeah. I'll say, loving greetings, my dear divine early adopters. You know what early adopters is? You know, in the tech world or in the business world, when there's a new product or a new technology, and certain individuals are the ones who adopt it ahead of the majority of the population. And that's really, that plays a crucial role in the introduction or the adoption on a wide scale. So that's how I think of you. You know, Guruji Paramahansa Yogananda, he often said, in his talks, he would pause and he would say, I'm telling you things that are far ahead of my time. I'm telling you things that are far ahead of my time. And he said to all those who were in those events, those classes and talks, he said, if you put these teachings into practice, in so many words, he said this, if you put the teachings into practice, you are on the cutting edge of human evolution. Sometimes he would give talks, and even the title of the talk that our revered Sri Dayamata would record them down, and sometimes the name of the talk was How to Live Several Hundred Years Ahead of Your Time. Of course, all of this is a reference to that ascending arc, that ascending age of spiritual civilization that we are gradually entering into. Sister Draupadi talked about that the other night, I think, didn't you, sister? She's sitting right over there, so just making sure I had that right. But so even though we're still yet to really arrive in that higher spiritual age, that more enlightened age, all of you are so blessed. All of you are privileged to be the early adopters of what? Of this teaching that was sent by God to provide the scientific spirituality for the coming global civilization. So again, welcome, my dear divine early adopters. And whether you're here in the Bonaventure Hotel in Los Angeles or at one of the many group gatherings that are being held all over the world in SRF centers, meditation groups, devotees have come together for this week, each one creating a nucleus that we have networked together by our communion with God and the great ones. Or maybe staying in your homes, participating from the quiet of the sanctuary of your own home. All of us truly are participating in this great unseen temple of divine communion. As you know, what I like to call our refuge of Kriya Yoga, our shelter of Kriya Yoga, our Kriya Yoga Sharanam. So before we begin or go any further, let me just say a little bit about the convocation. You remember at the opening program, it was mentioned that this week it marks 75 years since the first convocation was held at our beloved Mother Center on Mount Washington. It was hosted in person by our blessed Guru, Paramahansa Yoganandaji. And in those early days, delegates, as they were called, because only a few could come. You know, it wasn't so easy to travel from various countries around the world. So the whole group filled about half of the tennis court there on Mount Washington. Those of you who've been there can visualize that. There's a few hundred intrepid souls. And today, of course, because of the blessings of technology, but mostly because of the grace of God and the Masters. It's a very different situation, isn't it? Can you put that image on the screen? I want to show you we've had, as I mentioned, there's monastics, monks and nuns who have traveled to all these different cities that you see on the map there. This, for many years, even from the very beginning, this was called the World Convocation of SRF. Well, now look at that. That's what a World Convocation looks like. So we have, in no particular order, you can follow on the map if you want. In Detroit and Dallas, there were 2 monks have been there. The way it worked is that each group of monastics at the beginning of the week went to one city and spent several days, and then halfway through went to a second city, just so that we could have double the exposure, you might say. So Detroit and Dallas in the middle of the U.S., our Greenfield Ashram near Washington, D.C., the nuns who live there have been conducting programs throughout the week. Then we have monks who have visited Tampa in Florida and San Juan in Puerto Rico in the Caribbean. Then moving up further north, we have Toronto and Minneapolis. 2 other monks have been spending time with the devotees there. And crossing the Atlantic in Barcelona in Spain and Assisi in Italy, 2 of our monks have been conducting convocation there. Then, of course, we have our wonderful ashram in Nuremberg in Germany. That's actually this year, I should share with you, this is the 40th anniversary of that Nuremberg ashram. And our wonderful nuns there have hosted a special event. Devotees from various parts of Germany have joined together to make this convocation special. Also in Zurich, in Switzerland, the 2 of the nuns have traveled there. Then coming back to Central America and South America, we have in Jalapa, Mexico, in the eastern part of Mexico. And then 2 sisters, 2 of the nuns went there, and then they from there flew to Ecuador, to Cuenca. And then then going way over the Pacific, you can see 2 of the monks went to Tokyo and also to Malaysia to join with the devotees over there. And then you also see all those little lines going to India, because in each of our ashrams there, YSS ashrams in India, our monks have been conducting programs. The devotees come together to participate, a little different because of the time zone, but still participating in all those different places. So now the only problem is, I looked at that map earlier. I can't see it real well right now, but I see Central and South America, but I don't see Brazil or Argentina covered. So I guess I'm going to have to go there myself. Okay. Looking forward to it later this fall. Well, let's take a moment. I'd like all of you just to join me in giving a special vote of thanks to the many hundreds who are needed to put on an event like this. So. All the, of course, you saw the monastics who were participating as sort of the face of convocation, but really that's just the tip of the iceberg, because behind that there are literally hundreds of volunteers and staff and people just doing all kinds of things behind the scenes to make this possible. And each one, I think you all felt in your encounters, whether it was during the pilgrimage tours or various events around the hotel, how each one of them just so beautifully embodies that divine hospitality that was so much a part of our Guru's character, of his temperament. So I almost didn't need to say welcome at the beginning because they already did that for us. Wouldn't you say so? Yeah, thank you to all of them. Well, I want to ask you a question. What are you taking with you from convocation? What are you taking with you from the end of this week? Think about it. Well, one thing I hope you're taking is this. All right. It doesn't sound like we have any argument there. You know, I want to say just a few words about this, because any new book like this, of our major new book that has our Guru's wonderful teachings, this is a real milestone in the progress of our Guru's worldwide mission. This is, of course, volume 4 of his collected talks and essays, Solving the Mystery of Life. This series began 50 years ago, if you can believe it, back in with Man's Eternal Quest, which was released at Convocation back when it was at the Biltmore Hotel. So then that was volume 1, then 1986 came volume 2, The Divine Romance, and then in the 1990s we had Journey to Self-Realization, and then a little bit of a pause in that series while we had the Gita, Second Coming, and New Lessons, and now volume 4, Solving the Mystery of Life. But this is special. This is significant. As I said, you know, I can hold this up in one hand. It looks small, but think about it. You know, a seed is very small also. I don't think of this as just paper and ink, not by a long shot. This is a potent, concentrated seed. And each copy that now will make its way around the world, each copy is a seed. And who knows what fertile soil of souls it will fall upon. Who knows? But that great work of this divine seed, this divine book, begins this week. And all of you got to be the early adopters of that as well. Those of you who have been studying the new series of lessons, particularly the supplement lessons, well, each one of the chapters, 39 chapters, 39 talks, is like one of those. So I'm telling you this because those who are all caught up with all the way to year 3 of the supplement lessons, 39 of these makes a year and a half. You can think of this as year 4 of the supplement lessons. So coming back to the question, what are you taking with you? What are you taking with you from convocation? Well, here's what I have to suggest. I'd say, if you take a copy of this book, Solving the Mystery of Life, and you take a bookmark to the SRF website and YouTube page, I think you'll be doing just fine. I won't have anything to worry about any of you, of what you take, outwardly speaking anyways. So those are outer takeaways, but of course, what we've all felt, what we continue to feel, building day by day throughout the week, so much more profound, so much more significant are those inner takeaways. What are we taking inwardly out of this week? And again, if I can be so bold as to make a suggestion, I would say, take with you an awakened enthusiasm. An awakened enthusiasm. I want to come back to that in a minute, but to talk a little more about that. But first, let me tell you a story. At the beginning, or before the beginning of the week of convocation, and I was thinking about this, about what are the devotees going to get when they come to this convocation. And a week or two before that, I had been talking with a very dear devotee of this path, and he was telling me just how deeply inspired he's always been by the life of our second president, Rajarsi Janakananda. And just reflecting on the beautiful relationship, the beautiful receptivity and attitude he had to our Guru and our Guru's teachings. You know, became just a shooting star, a very advanced soul in a short amount of time. But outwardly speaking, of course, he was a very significant figure in the history of Guruji's work. He met the Guru in 1932, and just to enumerate, just briefly, so you'll understand where I'm going with this, right away of course, Rajarsi, I should say for those who don't know, he was a very dynamic and successful businessman in Kansas City when he met the Guru. Wealthy man, very successful, self-made millionaire. So right away, he restored the publication of Self-Realization Fellowships magazine. It had been dormant for a few years during the Depression. He paid off for Guruji this millstone around his neck, which was the mortgage on the Mount Washington property. A few years later, he gave the funds for Guruji to travel to India to have that incredible last visit with his own Guru, Swami Sri Yukteswarji. And while he was away, he bought and paid for and constructed the beautiful Encinitas ashram, including that hermitage there on the bluff in Encinitas. He paid for the first printing press that Guruji installed at Mount Washington. And he also purchased the piece of land up above the lake shrine where today we have that beautiful temple. These are just a few of the things that he did, outwardly speaking, for Guruji. Let me just digress for a moment before I go on, just to share one little thing I came across, because you remember those of you who participated in the meditation a couple of days ago, and we went deep into that chant, "Why, O mind, wanderest thou? On the left Ida, on the right Pingala." So it turns out that was one of the favorite, or the favorite chants of Rajarsi. And let me just read this. This is from a letter, never been published before, that Guruji wrote to Rajarsi back in 1933. Guruji was spending a few days of retreat in a little place called Lake Elsinore, Southern California. And so he wrote this to him. He said about that retreat, he said, "These few days with a few devotees, we had day and night communion with the divine. Oh, I would have given anything if you could have been here to drink her name with us." Everybody was intoxicated with the divine wine and Kriya. I especially sang, on the left Ida, on the right Pingala, in the middle the taintless Sushumna. Seize her with all thy might. And I told everyone that this was your favorite. Everyone loved you and sends their love to you. Day and night, several days passed in one continuous ecstasy. Isn't that beautiful? I wanted to share that with you to make you feel you're part of the tradition. You're part of the continuity in so many ways of what Guruji started with his disciples all those decades ago. But to come back to the story about Rajarsi, this devotee who was talking with me was saying how inspired he was about Rajarsi's attitude toward the Guru. And he was recalling how Brother Bhaktananda, dear Brother Bhaktananda, who many of you remember from Hollywood Temple and from convocations in years past, he used to say, sometimes Rajarsi would ask Brother to walk with him when he was staying at Encinitas. They would walk on the lawn there in front of the hermitage. And Brother Bhaktananda said, by that point in his life, and again, remembering, keeping in mind all of these amazing gifts that he had given for Master's work, he said he never spoke anything. He never talked about that. In fact, he didn't talk about anything. He would just say, almost to himself, "What Master has done for me. What Master has done for me." So when I was thinking about this story at the beginning of the week of convocation, and thinking, what can you all inwardly take out of this? And this answer came to me so strong, so loud and clear that I knew I had to share it with you. What you take from this is that sense of what the Masters are doing for me. What the Masters are doing for me. And I knew that came as their response to your eagerness, your anticipation, your enthusiasm as you were all preparing to come here for convocation. So enthusiasm. That's what I want to see. It's not really even what I want. It's what I feel I know you all are going to take with you. And this, my friends, this is, we think of the word enthusiasm and we think, well, it just means to be positive-minded and be cheerful, to appreciate what we have around us. It's so much more than that. Enthusiasm is one of the how to live skills that every devotee can use to survive in this material world, to thrive in this material world, to be victorious in this material world. Actually, I think in many ways, we can gauge our own spiritual progress by the presence or absence of this one quality. Often we think, I wonder if I'm really making any headway. I'm studying the lessons. I'm doing my meditations. I'm trying to be a better person. Yes, all those things, but spiritual progress is a very shifty thing. In fact, we're usually the last ones to know. We're usually the last ones to know whether we're progressing or the other alternative. But I think, again, we can gauge, to a great degree, we can gauge our spiritual progress by our ability to stay in that consciousness of enthusiasm. Think about this. Think, what's the opposite? What's the opposite of enthusiasm? And, maybe we would think, Probably boredom or indifference. Instead of being enthusiastic, you're just indifferent. No, not necessarily. Actually, indifference in many ways is a very spiritual quality, and it's applied to being indifferent to the material world and indifferent to the temptations of the senses and preference to the higher joys of the soul. So it's not indifference. I'll tell you what it is. The absence of enthusiasm, or the opposite of enthusiasm, is learned helplessness. Learned helplessness. You know what that means? I got a nice definition from the internet for it, because but probably most of us, if we're like the typical devotees, including myself in that, we know all too well what this condition is. But the clinical definition is learned helplessness is a psychological condition where individuals believe they have no control over their situation due to repeated exposure to stress. And it leads them to stop trying to change their circumstances even when they have the power to do so. Wow. And it says this mindset can result in feelings of powerlessness, low self-esteem, and lack of motivation. Or in other words, that consciousness of victimhood, of feeling I'm a victim. And the antidote for that, in my experience, in the experience of many, is this divine quality of enthusiasm. I think you all know that word. It comes from a Greek word that literally means the presence of the divine within you. God within you is enthusiasm. And of course, specifically, when we're talking about deploying this as a how to live tool, a how to live technique, we're talking about enthusiasm for what the Guru has given to us in his amazingly powerful, amazingly effective how to live teachings. So this is very serious. Do you mind if we just talk? We have to talk in a real way once in a while. And let me just give some real talk to you about this. Is that okay? Because I want us all to realize that either we deploy this tool of enthusiasm, or we will become a victim of learned helplessness. Believe me, in this world, those are the alternatives. When it's easy in the world today, confronted with the different outer circumstances, the outer negativity and chaos in the world today, when you find yourself feeling anxious or feeling affected by it or feeling ruffled by that, here's what I want you to do. Here's what Guruji wants you to do. Just stop and remind ourselves that no matter what the macro events that are going on in the world, in the outer environment, there's one truth that we can anchor in our consciousness in the present moment. And that is this statement by our Blessed Master when he told us, "You are the master of the moments of your life." No macro event can take that away from us. If moment by moment we reorient, re-anchor ourselves in that sense of mastery, even in just the simple avowal, a simple affirmation, a simple reconnecting with that divine presence by going within just for a moment and Om Guru, Om Guru, Om Guru. These are not just words. They shouldn't be just words. Don't let them be just words. Let them be a reminder of what? Of Om Guru, Om, that all-powerful, all-pervading vibration of God's presence, flowing throughout the universe, flowing through every atom, every particle of creation. And that vibration, Om Guru, imbued with the Christ consciousness, personified by our own revered Paramahansa Yogananda. You understand? You feel that? Do you use that? Will you use that? I think I've told you before, really, over the years, one of the most helpful, one of the most powerful practices in my own life has just been using that invocation that we start all of our meditations, all of our prayers with, just Father, Mother, Friend, Beloved God, Jesus Christ, Bhagavan Krishna, Mahavatar Babaji, Lahiri Mahashai, Swami Sri Yukteswar, revered Guru Paramahansa Yogananda. Just that. How long did that take? 30 seconds? 30 seconds of reconnecting, 30 seconds of reorienting in that consciousness of being the master of the moments of our life. When we walk through the world like that, no outer circumstances, no macro events, no troubles or turmoil can shake us for very long. Maybe for a moment if it catches us off guard, but then right away we can re-anchor in that. You know, just think about it. Just repeating those names. Just affirming Heavenly Father, Divine Mother. What are we doing? What are you doing? You are using a very profound science, that yoga science of identification. Because even just saying Heavenly Father, implicit in that, I am identifying, I am the child of God. You understand? Even if you talk to Him and you say Father or her, Mother, you know, behind that consciousness, you are identifying, I am a child of the Heavenly Father. I am a child, a beloved child of the Divine Mother. So it's a powerful way of practicing the presence of God, of keeping our divine connection while living in the material world. That's what it means, as we've talked about in other events. That's what it means to be a mystic in the heart of the world, to walk through the world with the love of God in our hearts. I think easily another word we could use instead of enthusiasm, because it really means the same thing, is resilience. I'm telling you, when you use that tool of cultivating enthusiasm in the face of obstacles, and enthusiasm in the face of challenges, what you're really doing is you are cultivating that all-important skill of resilience. How much that's needed. If the people in the world today could even have one fraction of that quality of resilience that comes to the sincere Kriya Yogi, to the sincere practitioner of these SRF YSS teachings, the world would be a very different place. Very different place. You see, I'm always looking for ways. I just wish I could convey to you that fearlessness, that assurance, that sense of security that comes when we have made the effort to developing a working expertise in those how to live teachings. That's what I want for all of you. That's what Guruji came to give to all of us. You know, what does that even mean, the how to live teachings? How to live. Again, to me, first and foremost, it means the ability to live in the material world without losing our connection with the divine. It means that in every challenge, in every difficult situation that we encounter in life, we don't let it, again, for long. Maybe it's all right if we get thrown off guard for temporarily, but as quickly as we can, we don't become emotionally reactive with fear, with anger, or anxiety, or any of those other debilitating emotional states that make us forget that we are the soul. We are the soul, ever joyous, ever in command. So instead of succumbing to those emotions, we calmly, when we become familiar, when we become at least a little bit able, a little bit expert at applying these How to Live teachings, instead of succumbing to those emotional reactions, in the moment, we deploy whatever is needed from our spiritual toolbox, whatever is needed from our spiritual arsenal, if you want to call it that. Whatever divine quality is appropriate in that situation. Now some stories. I think what means so much to each of us, the more we learn about the life of our Gurudev, Paramahansa Yogananda, the more we realize that in addition to the collected talks and essays, in addition to the scriptures of commentary on the Bhagavad Gita and the Bible, in addition to those wonderful SRF lessons, his life is a scripture. His life is a scripture. He didn't just preach. He lived what he preached. In fact, in this book, in the first chapter actually, he says, each word that is coming to you through me is coming from God. And what I tell you, I have experienced. So it wasn't just theory. It wasn't just speculation. He had experienced it. So this year, you all know, we're celebrating the 100th anniversary of the founding of Mount Washington Mother Center, our international headquarters. And did many of you here have a chance to visit during the week? Yes? Yeah. Did you enjoy being welcomed on the front porch? Yes. Well, that beautiful picture of Gurudev. Well, it's inspiring to reflect on those 100 years of all of the victories that had to take place in order for us to get from 1925 to 100 years later to get to today. I'm sure there were many times, not just for Guruji, but for all of those who were around in those times, they probably wondered, is it really possible that this is going to succeed? They didn't, looking back now, it's a, wonderful, inspiring victory march. But looking the other direction from that perspective, not so much. Not so much. Guruji once told one of his early students, he said this, he said, the hardest moment in my life in America was when I decided to take on Mount Washington and signed that mortgage. The hardest moment in my life in America. And he went on, he said, I had always been free. I always felt free. But I knew I had to do this for my teacher, meaning for Swami Sri Yukteswarji, and for the work that I have come to do. Hardest thing he had done. Why? He knew what he was getting into. And he knew that it wasn't just building an institution. It wasn't just, he had to bring the disciples along with him, not just building the organization, building the institution, but also building their spiritual lives. In one of the lessons, in one of the supplement lessons, Guruji actually referred to this. He wrote this way back in 1930, so just 5 years after he had taken the plunge and signed that mortgage. And he expressed it in impersonal and in metaphysical terms, but knowing a little bit about what was going on, you can really see some of the personal element behind this. And he said this. He said, when advanced yogis or masters work for financial success for a spiritual organization or for a single individual, those masters put on the success and failure tendencies of the past lives of the person or group of persons involved. You know, again, wow. In other words, the master who takes responsibility for an organization, it isn't just bringing teachings, it isn't just giving talks and having inspiring events. He literally takes on the karma of the people, whatever karma the people in that organization have that affects the success or failure of the organization. You understand? You understand what he did for all of us? And let me just digress here for a moment and just say that, you know, when you think of the metaphysical principles involved in what I've just said, you can understand why Guruji was so grateful and why we continue to be so grateful to all of you who support this work, either by volunteering service, gifts of service, or by financial gifts. I want you to feel that. I want you to understand that in doing so, you are actually assisting with the karma taken on by the Guru. Can you see that? You know, the great ones, God Himself, they don't need anything from any human being. You know, they could materialize any organization, any institution, any success in the material world that they wanted. They don't need that kind of help. But as part of God's play, part of the show, part of the movie, the masters work within the laws, the natural laws. Usually, not always. Thank goodness. But usually they work through those natural laws, law of karma and so on. So again, I want to impress on all of you, when you help this work with your gifts, with your service, you're actually helping Him burn the karma, your own karma and that of others that are aligned with this organization. So for that, I thank you. But coming back to the story, he used to say to the disciples, Dayamata used to quote this to us all the time, that thing that he impressed on the early disciples. He used to say to them, if you all work together with love, harmony, kindness, and humility, this work will sweep the world. But again, it took literally years for him to build an organization with that kind of spirit. You know, he really hardly ever talked about what he went through in building this organization. I often reflect, and actually it's sort of humorous when you think about it. If you go back and look in the autobiography of a yogi, you know the story of Guruji's life, and there's the chapter called I Go to America, and you read that chapter again, and you'll find two paragraphs out of those 500 pages. It says something like, years sped by. I lectured in every part of my new land. And then he skipped over. But here's the thing. We, as his disciples, as those who look to him as our spiritual guide and inspiration, we can appreciate what he went through. So again, I'm going to give you, this is some real talk, and you'll see why I'm sharing this. This was a letter that he wrote. He was lecturing in New York City. This was in 1926, long before the arrival of Dayamataji Rajarsi Janakananda, who came in the early 1930s. There were years when he was having to literally be at war to build this work. And so he wrote to somebody, one of the residents, one of the leaders at Mount Washington, and just poured out his heart. And again, this has never been shared before, but I want you all to appreciate what he did for us. So he wrote this, 1926, "Ever since I started the Mount Washington Center, I have not been left alone for one whole month without some sort of bullets being aimed at my heart. Is this my reward for working day and night, boosting Los Angeles Center to the skies, sweating blood, raising funds?" He said, "In this part of America," meaning New York City, "I have been passing sleepless nights, writing and working, only to be off and on inspired," quote, "by telegrams and letters and explosions. Everything is going, new explosion coming," from Los Angeles. And then he said, "Los Angeles has taxed my purse, my honor, everything for doing good, but never my patience." He wasn't about to give up. And here's really what touched me so deeply. He ended the letter and he said, "Nothing shall discourage me, no matter what happens to the center," meaning the Mother Center. "Nothing shall discourage me, for I have grown indifferent to garlands thrown at me or bullets aimed at me for my spiritual doings. I am here on earth to do my Father's work, and persecution shall be my power and my encouragement." When I first came across that, I'm sure as like all of you are feeling now, that's the kind of fearlessness that I want in my life, isn't it? That's the kind of inner strength that I want. Fearlessness, the resilience. You know, in the opening talk of this week, Brother Satyananda, you here, brother? Brother Satyananda, he's over here on this side. He described how Paramahansaji was a man of intrepid courage, supremely intrepid, fearless. And you know, we can see why, how. He lived by those words of his own guru, Sri Yukteswarji. Sri Yukteswarji famously said, "Look fear in the face, and it will cease to trouble you." And he embodied not only that principle, but several others that have meant something to me over the years. And here's one for you that certainly exemplify what Guruji demonstrated. One author wrote, "A man that flies from his fear may find that he has only taken a shortcut to meet it." You know, look fear in the face. Don't try to run from it. And this is wonderful. One author, C.S. Lewis, wrote, Courage is not simply one of the virtues, but the form of every virtue at the testing point." Isn't that profound? Courage, resilience, fearlessness. And Thomas Edison said, "When you have exhausted all possibilities, remember this, you haven't." Oh, Guruji taught us these qualities by living them, even through these most severe difficulties. And again, to come back to our point, I would say that in his life, those qualities of fearlessness, of courage, of resilience, those were nurtured day by day by that unquenchable enthusiasm he had. As he said, for what he was entrusted with by God and the Param Gurus, and enthusiasm for what he knew this work would bring to millions of souls in the end. He never lost that enthusiasm. So I read you that one from 1926. Now I'm reading you another one from 1951, 1 year before his Masamadhi. He said, I have seen those devotees who are in tune with me change spiritually every day. They are like shooting stars. I have quite a few of them. Do you think I would put up with all the difficulties and troubles of an organization if it didn't result in spiritually awakened souls? So you see why he was able to keep on persevering. And he went on and said, he who has God consciousness can pass that awareness on to others if they don't resist him. It isn't necessary, Guruji said, it isn't necessary that you be with the Guru and talk to him. Just be mentally in tune. He said, I feel and recognize the vibrations of those who are mentally in tune with me, wherever they may be. And I can tell you without a shred of doubt that includes all of you and all of you in these behind the video camera there around the world. He said, I feel and recognize the vibrations of those who are in tune with me, wherever they may be. Those who come to me with a sincere heart will never be the same again. But you must not waste your time. Use this lifetime for finding God. There is no other purpose in life. We are here for that supreme realization. That is why those who do not meditate are not happy. But in addition to meditating, he said, you should also be active for God. Suppose, he said, suppose you were all as interested as I am in this work. We could change the world. Enthusiasm. One time, somebody asked me, actually several times in my travels, asked me to share what are some of the most meaningful words from Guruji's writings and Guruji's teachings that have meant the most to me. And I had two answers, one general one, the general one and a specific one. The general one is really the most meaningful words of Guruji are whatever words in the given moment, in the given situation that rekindle my awareness of my connection with God. My awareness, my memory, my striving to remember of my divine nature, a radiating ray of spirit, a soul. So those come in the moment. You know, the books like this, they're filled with it, every page. When you go through, you know, I'm sure a lot of you go through either the hard copy or the digital copy and, you know, make underlines of that's a key that I'm going to want to remember and carry on into my life. So those words will come to us. They come to us. Those are our divine companions, you might say, in whatever situation we may find ourselves. So that's the general answer. But I want to say something about something very specific that's meant just everything to me. If you don't mind me sharing, something is very personal, but this one statement that for over the years has really been the secret guide, you might say, to my own efforts at discipleship. It was a simple statement that the Master made to his first American disciple, Dr. Lewis. And on that first day when they met, he had given him Kriya Yoga initiation, and they spent many hours together late into the night. And after giving him initiation, Guruji looked into Doctor's eyes and he said, promise me one thing, that you will never avoid me. And I remember when I read that, I used to think, what a unique way of describing or expressing, you know, how to get the most out of the guru-disciple relationship. You know, he didn't say, promise me that you will never do this or do that you will always behave in the highest, most saintly manner. He didn't say that. He didn't say, promise me you'll never lose your temper. He didn't say, promise me that you'll never let yourself get into a mood. He didn't say, promise me that you will never feel greed or anger or lust. He certainly encouraged those things for his disciples. But what he did say is this: promise me you will never avoid me. And I can't tell you how many times over the years, sometimes this happens to anyone who's being real and trying on the spiritual path. It doesn't ever go in a straight line, straight up, does it? Far from it. We all have our ups and downs. And during those times when I sometimes would feel like I had let him down, or maybe when I got too busy or restless with projects and duties and responsibilities that, I would start getting a little negligent or indifferent to my devotional attunement or devotional contact with him, I would remember this. I think you can all probably relate and have felt this in your own life when there comes those times when you literally walk past the picture of the guru and you just can't bear to look at it. Out of that sense of, oh, I've really let him down. But that's where this comes into its great power. And I tell you, in all honesty, this I know was the saving grace of my life, is that I constantly reminded myself, Master, no matter what I have not done or what I have done, I will never avoid you. If we take that to heart, then all of those other saintly qualities, those will blossom in our lives. We will become those saintly devotees. Our Guru used to refer to his work as Church of all religions, right? You heard that phrase? And remember when we pray, at the end of every prayer, we have pray to the different aspects of God, and then the gurus, and then saints of all religions. The saints of all religions. Well, who are they? Who are those saints of all religions? We hear, and I know we're all inspired by our favorite saints, our favorite Hindu saints, or Christian saints, or Buddhist saints, or Sufi saints, others of various religions. But where are the saints of all religions? I want you to discover the answer to that question by looking in the mirror. Because as a follower of this path, the destiny of each one of us, each one of you, each one of us in the ashram, each one of Guruji's followers around the world, our destiny is to become a saint of all religions. I don't have time now, but I'd like to refer you to, there's a beautiful lesson in the supplement series, lesson 63. You can look it up, where he talks about this idea of the Church of all religions, and particularly in this one section called Universal Religion for a United World, and how the SRF path exemplifies the basis for unity of religions. And in the end, he says this. He says, each of you can be a messenger of unity among religions and harmony among nations. Wherever you go, speak of the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man and the coming United States of the world. Feel the fatherhood of God, and that every human being belongs to you. As soon as you feel God in your heart, he said, you will contribute to world civilization as no king or politician has ever done before. You remember in past talks, I put forth some suggestions for you. Like one of them, remember, be a living link with Christ, Krishna, and the Masters. That's one of our aspirations. Be that living link. And again, be a mystic in the heart of the world, walking through the world with the love of God in our hearts. And again, to establish our lives in that refuge, that shelter, Kriya Yoga Sharanam, that's been created and maintained for us by our dear beloved Paramahansa Yogananda. So if you'll indulge me, I'd like to add one more to the list. That's why I fired you up with enthusiasm before springing this on you. Before springing this on you, intrepid souls. I want to expand that last one about establish your life in the refuge of the Kriya Yoga Sharanam by offering an invitation to those who are interested, those who are receptive. Not only establish your life in that Kriya Yoga refuge, but help to build it. Help to extend its reach, its welcome to all of God's children into that shelter. Another story, and this I want to use this to focus on one other facet of this aspect of resilience and this aspect of enthusiasm, this aspect really of discipleship. Guruji told this story. He said back in 1941, he said, last summer, meaning 1940, he was traveling. He said, I stopped at a monastery where I met one of the priests. He was a wonderful soul. And I asked him, how long have you been on the spiritual path as a monk? About 25 years, he said. Then I asked, do you see Christ? I don't deserve it, he said. Maybe after death he will visit me. No, Guruji said. You can see him from tonight if you make up your mind. And he said tears filled his eyes and he remained silent. You can see him from tonight if you make up your mind. You know, he wasn't just talking about making up your mind in the sense of a supreme effort of willpower or trying harder, making more of an intense effort. Of course, that's part of it. But really, making up one's mind like that, most importantly for many of us, means making up our minds that we are worthy, that we can have that blessing, that we can have that spiritual consciousness. You know, how many blessings in meditation and in our spiritual lives, how many of them become unavailable to us simply because we think of ourselves as not being worthy? Make up your mind, he said, from tonight. You know, it's like, just picture, suppose somebody is softly whispering in a room how much they love you, how much they think of you, how highly they think of you, how much they esteem you, and they admire you. But you're simultaneously saying, no, I'm no good. No, I'm no good. No, I'm no good. And you drown out completely, isn't it? Can you relate to that? That's what we mistakenly, all too often, do in our relationship with God and Guru. You know how much I rely on and benefit, as I'm sure I know all of you do, from Guruji's cosmic chants, isn't it? We had some wonderful experiences in the Kirtan this week. Yes? And from the time when I was just beginning on the path, one that spoke so powerfully to me because I needed it so much. It was really filling a great gap in my temperament up to that point. And that is that beautiful chant, "Door of my heart. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Wilt thou come? Wilt thou come? Just for once come to me." And that carried me through many years of my early journey on the path. But here's what I want to point out to you. There came a time when I realized, you know, I have only gotten half of the meaning of that chant. Because only half of it, as powerful as that half is, of the devotion and the longing and the yearning and the persistence of, wilt thou come, just for once come to me. As powerful as that is, the other half of it is when we realize, again, in connection with this idea of are we worthy, when we realize Divine Mother is actually singing that song to us. You close your eyes right now. Close your eyes and put this into practice. You think, turn it around. Instead of you calling to her, she's calling to you. Think of that. She's saying to each one of us, my dear children, door of my heart, open wide I keep for you. Wilt thou come? Wilt thou come? Just for once come to me, because she knows if we just come once, we'll never want to leave. And then, our soul answers back and says, will my days, Mother, will my days fly away without seeing you? And she doesn't directly answer, but she just repeats, night and day, I look for you night and day. Take that into practice of meditation and see what that does to that delusion of being unworthy. There's that famous hymn in the Western world, in the Christian world, Amazing Grace, that famous line where it says, I once was lost, but now I'm found. I never liked that line, and I'll tell you why. Because we're never lost. We're never lost. I remember one time when I was in one of my trips in India, we were driving through one of the cities in India, and those of you who have been there or are from there, you don't need me to remind you what the traffic is like in most of those cities. And at one point, I said, I had no idea where we are, and I'm completely lost. But the driver just smiled and said, no, you're not. No, you're not, because I'm with you, and I know where we're going. That's what the Guru does. Or the other one I loved so much was the story from World War II during it happened in England during the Blitz bombing in England. And one dark night when the bomber planes were coming over this one part, and this father and a little boy heard them coming. They heard the air raid sirens, and so the father ran the little boy outside, and there was a air raid shelter, a bomb shelter. It was underground. You had to jump into a pit to get into it. And the father jumped in. It was completely dark in the middle of the night, and the planes were starting to come from the distance. And the little boy kind of panicked, and it was so dark. He said, "Father, I can't see you." And the father said, "That's okay. I can see you. Now jump." Even when we can't see, God sees us. Guru sees us. Guru knows where we are. He knows the path. Trust them. Trust them. Well, my dears, I've gone way over time. I'm going to have to do some real apologies to those who keep track of these things. which clearly doesn't include any of you. You know what? Here's what I say to them. Look, just go, when you go on the YouTube video, just turn it on 1.5 speed. You know, you'll be way under the limit. No, but in all seriousness, it's hard to say goodbye. I never say goodbye. In the ashram, on the path, we say, till we meet again. You know, I think I've told you the story when the last day before March 6, 1952, day before Guruji's passing, and he was at the Hollywood Center, and one of the dear nuns at that time, Sister Satyavati the first, we have a second one now, but she was a French-speaking nun, and she was watching as Master left them for the last time at Hollywood, got in his car, and somehow they knew, they just had all this sense that something significant, something terrible is going to happen. And he got to the car and he turned around, and first time ever that he had ever spoken to her in French, and he didn't say goodbye. He didn't say adieu. He said au revoir, until we meet again. So maybe you arrived at convocation, you know, with some troubles on your mind, with some heaviness in the heart. Mind may be clouded by worries or worldly concerns. But look what convocation does. You know, it's just like what our Guru said about his work as a whole. He said it starts off just like a gentle breeze, isn't it? And then it gradually increases, becomes a zephyr, stronger and stronger, until finally it grows into a mighty wind, sweeping away the clouds and the impurities of delusion. That's how convocation works, isn't it? And I tell you, the difference between all of you at the beginning of the week and the end of the week, I see that, I feel that, and I know you feel it too. So I hope that breeze has become a mighty wind in your consciousness, blown away that fog around your souls, and now you see clearly the path before you. So let's all go forward together, renewed enthusiasm, undaunted resilience, with the inspiration, the determination to deepen our practice, to share our light, to shine humbly as those beacons of divine love in this world. Let's even go higher than that and say, let's go forward with the goal, with the aim of becoming one of those saints of all religions, living examples of those universal principles that aren't confined to any denomination or any specific sect or branch of religion, those universal principles of moral clarity, divine love, and the unquenchable joy of the soul. Well, my prayer for each of you, may you walk forward with enthusiasm in your will, with calmness and assurance in your heart, and with Master's hand always in yours. And may you always feel the loving gaze, the loving care and protection of our divine Father, Mother, friend, and beloved upon you always. And especially, may you always know, without a doubt, that you are never lost, because God and Guru see you and guide you and rejoice in your journey home. God and Gurus bless you all. to stay for another week. Well, God bless you all. I wish we could stay for another week. Don't forget those bookmarks of the YouTube channel and the SRF website. And convocation goes on and on and on until we meet again.
We love you.
Jai Guru.